Hey everybody, welcome to the Hopkinson Arts Podcast. Today I'm joined by multi-instrumentalist and producer Dave Scott. Dave, how are you doing?
I'm good, man. How you doing today?
Man, my whole long day since I woke up 5 minutes ago has been just really fulfilling, meaningful, hard work. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I know the feeling. I was in the studio till about 2 a.m. last night, so
Oof.
this is a nice bright and early morning for me as well.
We'll have to talk about what you did in the studio soon, but first I just want to ask, I am interested to hear about what you do as a multi-instrumentalist, and what kind of stuff you perform.
Okay. I've been around for decades. I just turned 60, so I've been playing professionally since I was 15, and it's all I've ever done to make a living. So I've played with uh, more bands than I can count and more musicians than I can count. I did my tour of duty, as you say, back when I was in my 20s and 30s and mid 30s. I was touring a lot and doing a lot of studio work. And then I kind of just slowed down a little bit and wanted to stay close to home. And then, so playing in more restaurants, clubs and churches and things like that, more locally here in Atlanta. I still go out on the road a lot, but I try to stay home as much as I can. As far as the multi-instrumentalist thing goes, I've always been a multi-instrumentalist. I started off on piano. I think like most people do, or most multi-instrumentalists do, or piano's the the master instrument of everything that I do. In my head is always wrapped around the piano.
Right.
No matter what other instrument I'm playing, I'm always picturing the piano in my brain.
Mm-hmm.
So I started playing piano when I was just very young, and I don't even remember how young I was when I started, probably in diapers. And my mom always made a comment of she could tell something was different with me when I was a toddler, because most toddlers would get up on a piano bench and just bang on the piano just to make noise with it. And I wasn't like that. She said that she could see a difference in me from the get-go, because I would just play one note and then play just one other note. And she said she could see the wheels turning in my brain.
Yeah.
Of, okay, these two notes are different. Instead of just banging a bunch of notes and making noise, she could tell already in a toddler's age that I was deciphering the notes had different tones in them. And so, I was playing piano. By the time I was 5, I was telling people in kindergarten, when I grow up, I'm going to be a musician. I knew that's what I wanted to be at 5 years old.
Wow.
So my family, I had older brothers. I was the youngest of 4, and I had a brother that was 6 years older, another brother that was 8 years older, and a sister that was 10 years older. So once they kind of grown up and out of the house, I was pretty much living like an only child. But when they were growing up, they were all musicians as well, including my mom and dad. So there was all these instruments laying around. My brother he liked to play guitar, and I had another brother who was a drummer, and actually my brother that played guitar actually was also a trumpet player, a very incredible trumpet player.
Wow.
Uh,
Not a quiet house, huh?
I'm sorry?
Not a quiet house, huh?
Not a quiet house at all. But so I was always just kind of dabbling around. I'd play piano for a while, and during the course of the day, I'd sit down the piano and play for an hour or so, and then I'd pick up a guitar and pick around on it, and then bang around on my brother's drums, and that kind of taught me, or gave me, that producer mentality. Once my brain was thinking. When I was playing drums, I was going, oh, so this is what a drummer does, or playing bass guitar. Oh, well, this is what a bass player does.
Right.
And you learn all those instruments. You're not just like, your brain's not just thinking guitar or keyboard. You're listening to the whole production.
Yeah, it's like a full synthesis of sound. Yeah.
So, I've always kind of thought in that mentality of, the listening to the production of things and listening to how things are recorded and mixed and what each individual instrument is doing to complement the other. And so that's just kind of how I grew up. And so when I was in 5th grade, I guess, I wanted to be a trombone player. And my dad came home one day with a saxophone. And I was really upset. And I said, Dad, I don't want to play saxophone. I want to play trombone. He said, yeah, but I got a better deal on this. This is what you're playing. That was like the best thing that ever happened to me. I don't know if I would have gotten half of the gigs in my life that I've gotten if I would have been a trombone player. Oh my God.
No truer words have been said. I mean, I've never heard of a kid who said, Dad, why did you buy me a saxophone? I wanted to play trombone. But you were the first, Dave. So there you go,
What happened to me was my dad buying me a saxophone. It's like, okay, that just opened up a whole nother world. Right. And so, so I've always been a saxophone player. I've always been a keyboard player. And, I played in bands for a long time, and I've always kind of been like a side guy. Somebody hires me for certain things, and very rarely am I in a situation where I can actually facilitate all of those in a situation. If I'm playing in a band or if I'm filling in a band, a sub or even like a full-time band, if I'm playing with some guys regularly, it ends up I'm either a keyboardist and I play very little saxophone, or they hire me as a saxophone player and I play very little keyboards, or they hire me as the vocalist and I'm not doing any instrumental, playing any instruments. I'm just standing out in front bringing the front band. So doing a solo thing where I can produce my own tracks and I can kind of stretch out and facilitate all those instruments in one gig where I can play saxophone throughout the entire night as much as I want to, or singing the entire night, playing piano the entire night.
That is so important for gigs. People have no idea. A lot of the most successful people I've met in various cities, whether it's Nashville, Orlando, they're multi-instrumentalists. They can really hammer it down like, oh, do you want me on bass? All right, cool. I'll be there. I'll show up with my bass. Do you need me on keys? All right, cool. Be there in half an hour with my keyboard. Right. That's so important. And I'm sort of relating to what you said about the piano, where people don't understand the piano's function. They think it's just another instrument that plays chords. But you were talking about how you see everything in terms of seeing the keyboard, right?
Yep.
I think people underestimate this. The keyboard is the orchestrator's instrument. And
absolutely.
And so even I was talking about this with someone, but even the difference between black notes and white notes, right, on the keyboard are meant to create a distinction so that you can understand harmony and color, right?
Exactly.
And not every instrument has that. That same distinction is not as marked in the tenor saxophone or in horn instruments, or maybe even in mallet instruments because there's no color differentiation. But the keyboard really is the orchestrator's instrument. So I think a lot in keyboard too. I think about chord shapes in keyboard, right?
Exactly.
So, I think everybody. It's not condescending toward pianists to learn piano. I think everybody should learn piano.
Right. Yeah, it's the master instrument. Everything, in my opinion, everything revolves around the keyboard. Yeah. Or the piano, everything. When I'm, there's a lot of times when I'm on a gig, solo or with a band, and I'm playing keyboard, and then there's a saxophone solo in somewhere in that song, and I'm taking my hands off the keyboard, grabbing my horn to play saxophone. Okay, at that point, my brain's having to switch keys.
Oh yeah.
I mean.
And it's a tenor sax, so it's down a whole step or up a whole step?
Up a whole step.
Yeah.
Alto is down a third, minor third, or up a sixth, whichever you.
I definitely prefer up a sixth. I don't know why though.
Yeah. But so I'm I'm constantly and immediately having to switch keys, and then while I'm playing, I'm picturing the keyboard in my mind of what chords are played in this key that's going to fit what I'm playing here. And then I get done with the solo, then I have to switch back to keyboard, and I'm having to like switch all the way back again. So, there's a lot involved there.
But that's the advantage of someone who's not trained in a necessarily classical background. I know that everyone before a certain time was trained classically because jazz education was so limited before the 80s, right? But
Right.
Pretty much like before the 80s, everyone was trained classical. But you were talking about how you were having gigs whenever you were a kid, and a lot of this stuff is just experience with improvisation. I mean, a lot of the great jazz greats were also having gigs whenever they were kids, and
Yeah.
whether it's Philly Joel Jones, right? And a lot of this stuff is experience and just sort of trial and error with tunes, where you might hop on a tune that you haven't played, and by the end of the night, you know how to play the full chord sequence, you know how to play the full chord progressions, just by screwing up. I've been in that situation where you have to like really work in the middle of the song. The average like jazz song, right, goes on for like 9 minutes if it's a small ensemble with like 2 solos,
Right.
Right. So I'm like, okay, what's the bridge? Is this 2/5? Is it this 2/5? Is it this 2/5? Oh, it's that 2/5. All right, I've got it. So yeah.
2/5 of the 5.
No, it's 2/5 of the 6. No, it's 2/5 of the 2. No.
Exactly.
Oh my goodness. And then you're playing the wrong 2/5. It's like, wow, that would sound hip over a different tune, man. So
right. I a song that comes to mind when you're talking about that, a song that comes to mind is the old Toots Steelsman. I don't know if you know who Toots Steelsman is, a harmonica player.
No, I don't.
He wrote a very popular song called Blue Set. Mm-hmm. And that whole song, the whole melody and the whole chord structure is just a 2-5-1 progression, just 2-5-1 of this scale, and then when you hit the 1, then you play the 2-5-1 of that, and then when you hit that 1, you play the 2-5-1 of that, and it's just this melody. And
so for those hearing this, hold on. For those hearing this who are not trained in music, I have to clarify a few things. All of jazz is built so in music theory you're taught to read chords as numbers because that makes them easier to transpose between keys. And all of jazz is something called the 2-5-1, where you take the second chord to the fifth chord to the first chord of the first degree, and it sounds really resolutionary, resolutionatory, I don't know, but it sounds really good and jazzy, and basically most tunes are just a variation of that basic chord progression. So I mean,
it's not jazz though. I mean that whole
it's not even just jazz. No. It's a lot of rock and pop tunes. Except I feel like things outside of jazz tend to use 4-5-1 instead of 2-5-1. I don't know why.
Right.
But,
Right. And country's the same way. And if you're gonna do any studio work in Nashville at all, you better know the number system, because that's what they do.
Oh yeah.
I can go into a studio or get a studio somewhere that wants me to add Hammond tracks or saxophone tracks, and they'll send me a chart and everything's labeled out. Like I've got a C7 written and a G7 written. Tell the chords. But if you get something from Nashville, you get numbers.
Yeah, always, man.
Always. Yeah. You don't get like okay, this is in here play a C7 here and a G7. No, you get this. You get up at the top. This song is in the key of D, and then you get the numbers. You play a 1, play a 6, play a 3 chord, and that's how you have to figure it out.
Oh
so
yeah,
you better number system.
Well, I mean, tell us about the music scene in Atlanta.
Oh, okay. Well, when I first moved to Atlanta back in 1984, I grew up in Missouri, and in the Ozark Mountains in the southeast portion of Missouri, and I came to Atlanta in 1984. I was a 22-year-old kid, and man, then it's always seemed like there was some great Southern rock and roll being played here, and a lot of great country artists were here too. But then you dig a little deeper, and man, there's some really great jazz players in Atlanta, great jazz players. And so I just kind of engulfed myself in all of that. I didn't want to pigeonhole myself and just kind of be in one genre or one group of people that I associated with. So, I've tried to be as versatile as possible, where I can, stay working. I've always felt like, if I'm going to put food on my table, being a musician, I better be able to play with a whole lot of different types of styles and different people. Mm-hmm. So the scene here still to this day is pretty much that. It used to be, man, on every street corner, there was a 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10 piece band playing, everywhere. And there was budget to back that up. And, the musicians were, you'd be in a 10 piece band and you'd still, make some change. And I think everything changed back, in the late 80s when they kind of changed the happy hour laws here and the drinking laws. They kind of got really strict with some of the drinking laws as far as the DUIs and stuff. And it forced the clubs to change their approach in, like they used to do like a 2-for-1. You could buy, you could buy 2 drinks for one price and that kind of thing. And, that was causing some problems out on the streets, I think.
Oh, okay. I see.
So they changed those laws. And when that happened, people just kind of went, okay, you know what? I think I'll just drink at home instead of going out to the bars or whatever. And the budgets went way down in the clubs, like not just clubs, but, back then, man, that was when hotels even had bars and big bands playing, their lounges. And man, you don't see that anymore ever. You can't go into a Holiday Inn. Every Holiday Inn used to have a band playing.
No way. Oh, man, I was born in the wrong time.
You're probably too young to remember that too.
No. I mean, sorry. Yeah, I wasn't born until 1997. So
yeah, but man, like back in the day, every nice hotel had a bar, had a lounge, and a band playing. Either a lounge band, rock and roll band, whatever kind of music they wanted. But those all went away, and for years, there just wasn't a budget there for the bigger bands, and a lot of us went to a solo thing. And that's really kind of what prompted me to go into a solo thing. Was I realized I could do a gig by myself with some tracks that I made and produced, and make 3 times the amount of money that I was going to make with a band. So, now it seems like things are kind of starting to come back full circle. Now I'm playing in a band and doing my solo thing. I do a solo gig during the weeknights, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursdays, and sometimes Fridays. But then my band's playing on Fridays and Saturdays, and that's a nice balance, and it breaks up the monotony for me. But as far as the scene in Atlanta, it's man, there's some great players in Atlanta, and work is not really that hard to find if you've got the right connections here.
Then I might have to move to Atlanta. Man, that sounds like a hang. But I actually heard a tune of yours. I don't know if it was an original or not, but I heard one of your performances. This is actually an older YouTube. This one's from 10 years ago. It's a backstage Atlanta performance. It says
with Kevin Wyglad.
Yeah. That was pretty hip. You're on alto sax there, and you also had a tune called "Let It Go."
I wrote that.
Yeah, from your album "Passions of a Renaissance Man," which I also checked out. These are some pretty hip tunes. I have I'm wondering, when you're producing a tune, are you the guy in the studio with the knobs? And if you are, I want to hear about that process, because that's something I need to improve on a lot. I don't really produce, and whatever I do, it's always this sort of home software like Cubase, and I only know the very, very basics. I don't know.
Right.
I'm not qualified to be the guy behind the knobs, right? So why don't you tell us, how you approach that situation?
Being the guy behind the knobs has been the hardest thing of my whole life, as far as music goes. I am much more comfortable doing the creative part of it, doing the instrumentation of it, playing the keyboard parts, playing the saxophone parts, playing, doing the vocal parts, doing all that, doing the creative part of it. It just comes natural for me. The producing part, as far as the engineering, I guess is there a difference between producing, because while I'm doing the instrumentation, that is producing. I'm creating the music itself, but then the engineering part, the technical part of it, being behind the knobs, as you say, I'm always frustrated. Always.
Yeah.
I listen to something and I go, no, there's not enough reverb. There's not enough delay on that. I need to put more compression on this or that. And I'm never satisfied, but I can listen to what my performance, I can listen to what I'm playing instrumentally and go, yeah, I like that. That's cool. But I'm never happy with my mixes ever as an engineer. I'm never happy the way I mix something. And I always listen to that. I always listen to my mixes going, man, I should have done this. I should have done that. I should have done this. But, that's just one of those things for me. It just doesn't come natural for me.
Oh, no. I'm the same way whenever I write something, when I compose something and it's performed, I always think, man, I should have put a tenuto marking there. Or man,
yeah,
like that needed an accent, or that dynamic, it should have been a double piano because they're just playing it too loud, and it's
right.
Like stuff that really bothers me. I have a super fragile way of composing, right? And so I'm that same exact way. Now, with regard to producing, I was listening to I forgot which album it was, but man, I don't know how this guy got the gig, because a guitarist was featured on the album and we couldn't hear him, and it was a grade A, it was a top tier recording studio, and I couldn't hear the guitar player, right? So sometimes basic mistakes slide through the cracks, right? What's it like being in charge of that? And so do you ever get any help to make sure that these sorts of things don't happen, or are you all by yourself?
No, sometimes, like the album Passions of a Renaissance Man, I recorded that entire thing is self-produced and self-engineered, everything. All the instruments are performed by me. The drums are electronic, but I performed the drums individually, as far as programming how the bass and the kick drum and the snare drum would lay out, all that stuff. And all the instrumentation is me. But I did have a friend come in before I did the final mix and go, okay, or, just tell me if you hear something that's sticking out, because my ears are so tired of hearing this, that just like you said, there's a lot of things that can fall through the cracks. And, when you're working on something for 10 or 12 hours a day, your ears get tired, and, you think you're hearing something that you're actually not, that's actually not there. Like you can just like what you're saying about the guitar getting buried in a thing that you heard. The producer or the engineers probably heard that guitar line so many times that it was in their brain, and so in their inner ears, they're hearing it because it's just locked in their brain, but it's not coming out. It's just like it's in their brain. It's in their brain, not in their ear.
I mean,
and
something I
ears
always
can be tired.
Right. I mean, yeah, so something I always do is I will take a break and then wake up the next day, and the first thing I'll do is listen to it. And
Exactly.
if it sounds foreign or bizarre, then that means that my my first instincts were not correct, and I have to go back.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I've
Yeah,
been
and that's a very good approach, is to step back away from it for a while, let your ears rest, go watch TV or something, go, what I do, I have, that CD is named Passions of a Renaissance Man for a reason. Is because I try to spread myself out. I've got so many different hobbies and interests that I love to do besides just music.
Oh yeah.
And so I get away from music and go do something that clears my brain. Either, I'll go get on my horse and take a nice long trail ride on a horse, or I get on my motorcycle and, take a ride for the afternoon and just clear my brain and come back and start over again.
You have a horse and a motorcycle. That's definitely not a guy from the South. Yeah. Yeah, man. No, that sounds like the life, man. You have a horse and a motorcycle. Yeah. No, no, that's really important because it clears out your head. And again, music has no inspiration if there's nothing surrounding it in your life. So
Right.
that's really important. Otherwise, it's gonna, um, when I was younger, I wanted to be sort of edgy. Like, I was really inspired by Charlie Parker, and Charlie
Oh
Parker.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah, of course. And Charlie Parker was addicted to music, and never stopped, and really didn't do much outside of music and drugs. And so,
Right.
and
Yeah.
so he became extremely depressed. And at first I thought that was admirable because I was like, oh man, Charlie Parker, he's so cool, he's so dedicated. But then I realized that was his one fatal flaw. Like if he went from practicing, um, you know, uh, 8 hours or 9 hours a day to just practicing two, he probably still would have sounded the same. I have to be honest, because
Yeah.
there's a point of diminishing returns with practicing where like if you're addicted to it and then you just like can't stop, you're actually gonna not improve after a few
Right.
hours.
Right. I've got friends like that.
Oh
Uh, I've got friends here in Atlanta that, you ask them, okay, like, um, you know, what do you do like when you're not playing music? I practice. Like, okay, well then what are you doing when you're not practicing? Well, then I'm at a gig. And it's like, okay, you don't have any like something that gives you a break from all that? Well,
mm,
no, I don't. I
yeah.
don't. And they'll tell you, I really don't want one. It's like, man, okay, well, you might not want one, but I personally need one. I got to get away from it for a while.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and it's gonna help your playing too. It's gonna help your playing to separate.
Absolutely.
So I actually don't play much. I spend most of my time composing, and sometimes I'll just need a break from composing because I'm like I'm out of ideas. I don't know what
Yeah.
to do.
Yeah.
And so what happened was there was a jam session happening at the conservatory that I attend. So I just walk up to the piano, I hop on a tune. They call "There Will Never Be Another You."
Yeah.
In the key of C, which is weird. And I just hop on, I start jamming to it, and it was fun. I was playing really well, and yeah, I was playing well because I had a refreshing time away from the piano, so I got to review it better, right? Um,
Right.
and so that's good from time to time, but I spend most of my time composing. Um, but yeah, I actually wanted to ask you if there's any like important projects or important things coming up that you've been working on that you just can't wait to share, or is it just mostly been gigs?
It's in the last couple of years, it's just been, well, the pandemic, we all sat on our butts then,
Oh yeah.
but, um, right now it's just pretty much gigs. I've got a video thing that my band's putting a video together. And we got some of the raw footage back yesterday and we looked at it. We go, oh my gosh, we're so old and we're so fat. And, you know, it was a harsh reality. So we're kind of going, okay, we need to do some video editing now at this point,
Oof.
but so mostly it's just gigs where, right now I'm just, I've got a, this reminds me of a line in, Sleepless of Sea, no, You've Got Mail.
Oh yeah.
And
Okay.
Meg Ryan's boyfriend, they were breaking up in that restaurant, and Meg Ryan's boyfriend said, well, what about you? Are you interested in someone else? And Meg Ryan's answer was, I've got the thought of someone else. I've got the dream of someone else. So I don't know why I just said all that, but I've got the dream. I've got the dream of a new project that I want to record. I haven't gotten in my studio and sat down and recorded a whole project, an entire project. It's been several years. I've been so busy with some other things and some personal things in my life that kind of distracted me. And I've got a dream and a vision of a new project soon.
You want to
And
premiere what that idea is here on
sure.
the podcast? Yeah.
Well, I've got two or three different ideas. I just don't know which one I'm going to do first. I'm thinking of doing a sequel, if you will, of Passions of a Renaissance Man. and actually just calling it Passions of a Renaissance Man Volume 2, and just kind of keep it in that same smooth jazz vein. I've got some tunes picked out that I think that would go real well on an album like that, and keep it in that genre. I've got in the back of my mind to do a blues record. I've always wanted to do a blues record.
Call it Blues in the Back of My Mind.
Hey, there you go.
Yeah.
I need to write that down.
Yeah, go ahead. Blues in the Back of My Mind. Yeah.
Blues in the Back of my mind. That's
and you
awesome.
have it on here archived in case you have to go back to it.
Yeah, Jacob, that's awesome, man. But I've got a blues record in mind, and
now is this like B.B. King blues? Is this like rock and roll blues or jazz blues? We're talking.
It would be a combination of like a Ray Charles, Stevie Ray Vaughan kind of blues.
Okay, hip, yeah.
And actually, I don't know if you've come across this when you were looking at my music. I know you saw Passions of a Renaissance Man. I've got a CD also out that's called Going Home, and it's all old hymns that I grew up with singing in the Baptist church in this little country town that I grew up in Missouri. And it's all old hymns, but it's done like it's like Stevie Ray Vaughan, Ray Charles kind of versions of them, kind of real bluesy and gritty.
Yeah.
And if you want to listen to that or want to find that, it's on iTunes as well. But it's called Going Home. Right. And I want to make a CD kind of that kind of genre, but not hymns. More of a songs that you wouldn't think in that genre, like James Taylor ballads.
Oh,
and Elton John stuff, and turn them into like a more of a gritty Ray Charles kind of bluesy thing.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I feel like that's a whole genre in of itself, taking an artist and doing something you wouldn't expect from them.
Yeah.
Sort of remixing them in a way that didn't seem intuitive. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. No, that's great stuff. I'm not really good at that, but so because I like to stay loyal to the origin of the tune, and so it's difficult for me to. Yeah.
Well, see, that's you've commented that you're a composer.
Oh yeah, I almost always compose. I've only arranged once or twice. I don't really compose that much.
But see, I'm not a composer. Me being a producer, I've always that's one of the things that I have always enjoyed doing is taking someone else's songs and putting my own little twist to it and making it my own. And, I'm a thief. I'm stealing other people's songs, but I'm making them my own. And that's one thing that people have always said about my solo gigs is the comments that I hear most of all is, man, you took that song, man, and it's like you made like a whole new arrangement of it that's so cool and so hip, and it's so you. And that's what I tell friends of mine. I've got a friend of mine, actually, he's in my band, that he's going to branch out and start doing some solo gigs.
Oh, hip.
And he was asking me my advice on, okay, like, how do I produce these tracks to make them sound like yours? And I said, well, first of all, don't produce your tracks like the record, like the original recording. Nobody wants to hear that. They want to hear something original. Give them a tune that they're familiar with, but put your own twist to it.
Right. I was thinking about that the other day because I was listening to Earth, Wind, and Fire. And they have one of whoever it was in their studio producing is just one of the best cats ever, because just the sound equalization is just miraculous. But I was listening to the album.
Steely Dan.
And then and oh my gosh, yeah. But I was listening to the album, and then I heard them in concert. I saw
totally different.
I was listening to a concert of them in Brazil, and it's way different because it shouldn't be sounding the same, because if it sounds the same, the audience is not getting anything new, but also it shouldn't. Like, the sound equalization in a studio is meant to be equalized, right?
Yeah. Well, even the arrangements of the songs and everything. I mean, Earth, Wind, and Fire, man, those guys, they never played the same song twice the same way. Ever. It was just like a big jam session. Okay, let's kick this song off and see where it goes, kind of thing. That was their mentality.
Yeah, well. He was. I know that Maurice White was he was a mystic, and so he had a lot of these sort of more mystical ideas about music. I know that I met a drummer in not in Mali, but from Mali, who was telling us about how they would have drum circles in Mali that would last for 7 hours. I mean,
Yeah,
and people would get entranced by it, and so there's this sort of musical mysticism that happens where you're never going to play this same thing twice. So you might
right.
have an Earth, Wind, and Fire song that goes on twice as long as usual, and they're playing it completely different, and they add in completely different stuff and new instruments, and it's a trance,
Yeah, yeah, and the ad lib solos are never like the record, and which is cool. The people get used to hearing a solo on the radio or on their on a CD, and they hear that solo and they think, they expect to hear that solo played the same way, but they don't understand that when they were in the studio, that solo was an ad lib solo.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
like a guitar riff, a guitar solo that's like a famous guitar. Okay, Van Halen, for instance. Okay,
Yeah.
let's look at Van Halen, or let's look at the Michael Jackson. What was it? Beat It. That Van Halen played that ripping guitar solo on. Yeah, it was Beat It. And oh my gosh, that solo. There's been guitar players that have made their fingers bleed trying to figure out that solo and play it note for note. But, the thing was, it was an ad lib solo. Van Halen would never play that solo the same way twice if he had an opportunity. And so it's the same way with Earth, Wind, and Fire, man. They get on the stage and their solos, they'll take a solo and stretch it out another mile or two and just making it up as they go along, man. And that's what music is. If you just keep doing the same thing every night, how redundant and how boring is that?
Oh yeah, for sure. No doubt. No doubt. I mean, yeah. I mean, written solos are great to practice, but whenever it comes time to play the gig, you want to mix things up. Yeah. So
Yeah.
But I have to ask, I always ask this of any guest, which is it's always about advice for people with aspirational desires in the field. And I'm wondering, since you're more on the production side, even though you have a diverse array of talents, what kind of advice would you give to people who are interested in music production specifically? Because it's not a niche field, but it's a really challenging and specific one. So where would you say people need to start?
Boy, in this day and age, that's a hard question. With the way technology is right now, you don't really need a whole lot of talent anymore, which is really sad. There's kids that's producing stuff that I listen to and I'm going, my gosh, that's incredible. And they don't have a lick of talent, but they push the buttons and they know how to get a sound out of their laptop.
Right.
And it's kind of sad where where the industry has gone with that, with technology. Technology, man, it's a blessing and a curse.
Oh yeah.
I can't imagine what kind of a monster I would be and some of my friends would have been if back in the 1970s when we were growing up, if we had the technology available to us now. Oh my gosh, we would be monsters. But we were multi-tracking on 2 cassette tapes, bouncing them back and forth.
Yeah. Or taking the physically cutting, right?
Yeah, physically cutting tape and splicing it.
Yeah.
So the advice I would give people coming up wanting to be in the production industry of it is you better know your instrument. And in this case, your instrument is your computer. You better know your software. You better know if you want to be an engineer sitting in a top ranked, top shelf studio in Nashville, New York, or LA somewhere, the software that they're using to record with, either if it's Pro Tools or Logic or whatever, you better know what everything in that software is for and know how to use it. and no guessing. And that's the only thing, that's the only advice I would give them, because in today's technology, that's really about all you need. If you know your software and know how to navigate it, the software takes care of itself.
Yeah. Yeah.
The software is going to make you sound like you got a whole lot more talent than what you really do.
And I was thinking about that because I'm a decent instrumentalist. I wouldn't say I'm great, but I learned Cubase relatively quickly, and that's one of the main softwares. And
Yeah.
they have so many tutorials now and resources, and it's you can produce what you want within only a few days.
Yeah.
Whereas original production skills may have taken months or years to sort of master and harness.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's not that there are untalented people who rely on that software. It's just that the software makes it easier for people who don't really focus, or people who don't really put in the work to sort of do what they got to do real quick.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And then you got people nowadays that are, software snobs. Oh, I don't know. I'm not going to record anything unless it's on Pro Tools, or I'm not going
Oh my
to,
goodness.
those kind of people.
Yeah, and then they walk back to the trailer and request food, and
yeah,
because
I have people send me track. I have studios that send me tracks, and they want me to put a Hammond part on, or do a sax section, or whatever, background vocals or whatever. And they specifically put in the email when they email me the tracks. Client requests this to be on Pro Tools.
Yeah.
Really? Well, you're sending me a WAV file, so. I'm just going to throw that WAV file onto my Logic that I'm the program that I use on Apple, on my Apple computer. I'm just going to throw these WAV files on Logic. I'm going to record the tracks that you want. I'm going to convert those to a WAV file and send it back to you. All you're going to do is put that WAV file back in your Pro Tools, and you'll never know the difference. But that's what the industry comes down to is, specifically they want Pro Tools, or they want Logic or Cubase or whatever, they specifically want to record it on whatever. But what's the difference? It's all WAV files anyway. It doesn't matter what you record it on. It's what's, I guess what I'm saying is technology has taken over to the point where they're picky about what it's recorded on, and not concerned about how it's recorded, or not concerned about the performance of the recording. I guess that's the best,
which is most important. Yeah, you can't lose sight of what's
part of it. They don't care about. They just want the technical part of it. They don't give a rat's behind about how it's performed.
Well, how much is modern day recording the way that we imagine it in the movies, where you're in a giant studio and you're turning knobs, versus just someone maybe in a home studio with a microphone sending stuff to someone who helps produce it? Like, what's the behind the scenes like in 2022?
I don't think it's much different than it has been in the last 20 years. He's still got as far as like movies and stuff, you still have to have some type of creativity there. I've got a friend of mine that lives out in LA, north of LA, in Malibu, who he's made his living scoring movie soundtracks.
Right.
Some really big movies, actually. And he's one. I got my start with him as far as studio work. My very first studio gig was with this guy, and we were all living in the St. Louis area. And he got a job doing a movie soundtrack to a little low budget B movie that was being filmed in St. Louis. And we went in and did the soundtrack for it. And you still had to play the parts, and you still had to make we still had to like be creative as far as set the emotion for that particular scene of the movie. So that really hasn't changed any. The technology has made it easier, where it's quicker and easier to produce it, but you still have to have some kind of creativity behind it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So, who have been some of your favorite people to work with, either in or out of the Atlanta area?
I've never been one to name drop.
Oh, even good name drop?
Nah, that's just not my style. But I've worked with some great people. I've got some people here in town. Just you know, there's some cats here in Atlanta that I really enjoy playing with, just because they make me grow. I can step on the stage with these guys and go, I'm the weakest link of this bunch. And that's a good thing as a musician, to step on stage and be humbled every now and then and go, man, you know what? I better step up my game or these guys are going to eat my lunch.
Happens to me every time I play a gig.
You go. But, there's some guys here in Atlanta, a saxophone player that's just a monster. His name's Sam Skelton, a dear friend of mine. And I've learned more about saxophone just listen to him play. My running joke is, if I'm coming to a gig and if Sam Skelton is within a mile from me, I'm leaving my saxophones in the truck. I'm not even getting them out. And there's a guitar player that way too. His name's Bill Hatcher. And, I spent 10 years being on stage with them every Sunday at a big church in the Atlanta area. We were the hired guns there, basically playing for the church. And that was always so much fun to step on the stage with them and be stretched and be motivated to be on my best game every time, or it was going to show. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you need people like that.
Absolutely, man. If you're the big fish in the little pond every gig, you're not going to grow.
No. Yeah, exactly. And so now I spend a lot of time teaching. That's why I try to diversify my students. I'll try to teach, beginner, advanced, because otherwise I get used to teaching a certain style and it just don't work. So it's the same thing with gigs.
Right.
Yeah. But Dave, I appreciate having you on, and thank you so much for everything you had to say, man.
Yeah, man. Thank you. Let's do it again sometime.
Of course. Anytime.
All right, man.